Multiculturalism failing, says Swedish Prime Minister. He pleads for order as riots engulf Stockholm suburbs. This is from, the 22nd? In Sweden, critics of the multiculturalism policies lashed out at immigration laws. It says here that 80% of the 11,000 residents of this Husby, the city, are first or second generation immigrants. They said that the district has seen employment increasing and crime falling in the last 7 years. It says here it's been going in the right direction. Not everyone agreed with Reinfeldt's assessment of immigrant populated Swedish districts development. It says here, with critics saying the integration policies of the country and the whole of Western Europe are not working. This is a clear consequence of this multiculturalism politics that Sweden has adopted around the 1980s and increased in the 1990s. And this is not a unique one single occasion. It says we have had these ethnic-based riots against Swedish authorities. We've seen this in Western Europe. It says it's very sad, and I think we'll see more of this if we don't change politics, says the chairman of Sweden's National Democrats Party, Mark Ebertson. It says Sweden has been trying harder than any other country to try to push Europe to try to push for this integration. We have invested virtually billions from taxpayers' money into it, and we have tried everything that scientists have presented, and it's still not working. Then you have another article. This is from today. They don't want to integrate. The youth gang riots in the Swedish capital of Stockholm have entered the fifth straight night. Hundreds of mostly immigrant teenagers tore through the suburbs, smashing windows and burning cars. A Swedish Democrat MP, Ken Ekeroth, said, in Sweden you got welfare, access to the educational system up to university level, to public transport, libraries, healthcare, to everything, and they still feel, the immigrants that is, they need to riot through stones and Molotov cocktails. It says a Swedish journalist told RT the problem is not from the Swedish government, the Swedish people. It says the last 20 years or so we've seen so many immigrants coming to Sweden that really don't like it. So they don't want to integrate, they don't want to live in Swedish society, working, paying taxes, and so on. Editor-in-chief of a Swedish newspaper, Mr. Hadegaard, said these riots in the country that are spreading, continuing for a long time, that the multiculturalism success was a fiction, that they never succeeded. From the 22nd of May, Traitors shout, "Yes, we can," while immigration bill passes. It says here, Senator Chuck Schumer, chief sponsor of the bill, which would make citizens of tens of millions of illegal immigrants to the United States. So it's supposed to create a pathway to U.S. citizenship for millions of illegal immigrants. It also creates a new program for low-skilled foreign labor and would permit highly skilled workers into the country at far higher levels. It says they basically acknowledge that their legislation doesn't require illegal immigrants to pay all back taxes, saying that it would be too difficult to make them pay everything that they might owe. The Gang of Eight's bill chief sponsor is Zionist Charles Schumer. So it says here that the immigration overhaul could cost taxpayers around $6.3 trillion and would bring in a minimum of 33 million people into the country during the first decade. They estimate about 57 million new people, immigrants, and people with non-immigrant visas will be entering the U.S. as well. There's also privacy concerns. The measure would create a national biometric database of virtually every adult in the United States. They say it's buried in the more than 800 pages of legislation. It says here that it's innocuously named Photo Tool, a massive federal database administered by DHS containing names, ages, social security numbers, and photographs of everyone in the country with a driver's license or other state-issued ID. This is my website, ggnonline.com, global government news. Also on YouTube, DDarko 2012 and DDarko 2013 are my YouTube channels. There's a poll up here. Prior to the devastating tornado, did you receive a more significant level of aerosol spraying? This for U.S. residents so far. 50% say yes and 50% say not sure. I just noticed it's gotten colder since then, the last 2 days. Also, today it's been semi-clear. They're trying to spray, but they're not able to really saturate us, which is, I guess, a good thing. Donations are welcome, and for those who have donated, I appreciate it very much. Killing of British soldier stirs tension in poor corner of London. It says it's stirring racial tensions in one of the most ethnically diverse parts of Britain. So it goes. So in southeast central London, it says here, tucked away, Woolwich has changed as quickly as the British capital itself in the last 20 years, as successive waves of immigrants attracted by the area's cheaper housing have made it their home. A white woman in her 30s said, "How could this happen here? How could Muslims cut the head off of a British soldier in broad daylight?" Jabbing her finger at the mosque that's nearby, she added, "This place is part of it." She then used an expletive to denounce Muslims and shouted a slogan in support of the far-right Nationalist English Defense League. An unemployed 44-year-old says, like many local whites, he blames the arrival of outsiders. He was quoted as saying the influx of foreigners into the area in the last 5 years is totally ridiculous. So it says here, one individual, Mr. Ahmed, a 32-year-old fishmonger, said he hoped people wouldn't think all Muslims were like the two murder suspects. Not everybody is like them. I don't know why they do things like this. Muslims are peaceful people. The original title of this article is London Attack Leaves Multicultural Britain Shaken. There was no Muslim terrorism in the UK until Iraq's Oxford professor. British Muslims disown the Woolwich murders, and such extremists should be totally demolished in UK society. But in order to do that, UK must change its illegal foreign policy. Suspect Michael Adebolajo was inspired by cleric banned from UK after urging followers to behead enemies of Islam. As far as whether this thing was a hoax and it happened or not, I couldn't tell you. I wouldn't put my name on the line saying that the thing didn't happen unless I was there to see that it did happen or it didn't happen. But I'll never forget the Sheikh Imran Hossein basically saying, this is like a year ago, I remember seeing the video, he's saying that eventually you'll see it to where the Zionists will pull their card of the whole world of Islam and Muslims are rising up and to create that threat. So I always kind of just remember that quote. New application allows users, but I mean that's the thing though, they're calling it a terrorist attack and they're trying to stoke those basically Islamophobia flames, and that to me shows me that this is either the Zionist owned media just exploiting this and or another immigration issue. New application allows users to fight racist graffiti in France. I'll close this over here. It says a French anti-racism association is launching a mobile application it hopes will help eradicate racist graffiti by enabling users to take photos of offensive tags, geolocate them, and get them removed. The International League Against Racism and Anti-Semitism says the app was a digital response to a big increase in racist and anti-Semitic acts in France. So it'll be available for download June 11th. Teacher allegedly fired for using the word Negro in her Spanish class ensues. A New York City teacher was allegedly fired for using the word Negro to describe a student in her Spanish class, which she claims was part of a lesson in translation. Now she's suing because she hasn't been able to find a job since she was sacked. So she was allegedly fired after people reported her for calling a student Negro during the Spanish class. It says here, however, the Post reported that Smith, a black woman from the West Indies, said she only used the word in reference to the color black. She then reportedly explained to her student that it is not a derogatory term, that the Spanish word for a black person is moreno. So it says here her attorney says that they haven't even accounted for how absurd it is for someone who's black to be using a racial slur to a student. Talk about context. There's a lot of things wrong here. Israeli minister apologizes for accusing UK of disguised anti-Semitism. So the Strategic Affairs Minister, Mr. Steinitz, says comments to the Telegraph newspaper saying British perceptions of Israel were more negative than those of other Western or European countries was taken out of context. Steinitz said in the past times people said that they were against Jews. Now, especially after the Holocaust, nobody says that they are against Jews, but people are against the Jewish state. Says there should not be much difference between people in America, Canada, Britain, and Australia. They have the same language and similar cultures, and still in America, Canada, and Australia, in opinion polls, most citizens support Israel with a very warm, cozy feeling. In Britain, it is much less. Well, it is a main headquarters for the Rothschilds banking dynasty, so maybe there's that, I don't know. Millions falling into poverty in recession-racked Italy, says a report. Millions of Italians cannot afford to heat their homes properly or eat meat as our country is racked by recession and soaring unemployment, says a report. Found the number of people considered seriously deprived had doubled in the past 2 years. Something else I noticed, like in Greece, was this National Socialism rising, and it's just a result of what's going on with immigration and the economy. Whether this is being engineered by the powers that be or not, this is what's happening. UK's complicity in Syria is as reprehensible as Woolwich attack. And I'm sorry if I'm butchering that word or that name of that city. British respect MP George Galloway has described the attack as an indefensible crime, saying that Britain's complicity in Syria is equally reprehensible. He says the London attack, where people were beheaded, was similar to incidents taking place in Syria every day, adding that Britain is helping to pay for that sickening barbarism in the Arab country. Says the sickening atrocity in London is exactly what we were paying the same kind of people to do in Syria. Says we've all seen, if we care to match or watch, not just innumerable snuff videos on the Syrian rebels cutting people's heads off, but cutting out their hearts and eating their hearts on camera. UK chickens come home to roost in London. Says Malcolm X described the JFK assassination as America's chickens coming home to roost. Were elements of the British government complicit in the killing of a British soldier by two apparent Salafi jihadists in the same way the elements of the U.S. government killed JFK? They say it's quite possible, but it goes on there and includes all of the 9/11, 7/7, Madrid, Bali, Mumbai, as most recently of Boston, have been false flag operations by Zionist elements of the Western security services. And we do know that MI5 was aware of these individuals. Talking about Malcolm's chickens coming home to roost, the larger meaning was what you sow, you shall reap. And since the British government has been sowing terror all over the world for centuries, including synthetic Islamic terror, it is only to be expected that some of that terror should return to the island that launched it. Obama lifts ban on Guantanamo transfers to Yemen. So he says he's lifting a self-imposed ban on transferring Guantanamo Bay detainees to Yemen. I guess it's his way of, closing Guantanamo Bay. So, poll shows U.S. image in Russia has deteriorated. An opinion poll shows that the Russians' perception of the U.S. role in the world has deteriorated over the past year, hitting the lowest point since 2009. 53% of the respondents regarded the global influence of the United States as mainly negative. Only 17% of the Russian respondents view the U.S. influence in the world as mainly positive, and 30% viewed the role as neutral, or they did not answer. The country we view most positively is Germany, according to a BBC poll. With a 59% mainly positive rating, it bumped Japan from the top spot down to fourth at 51%. At the top three, Canada and the UK at 55%. It says Iran was the most negatively viewed with only 15%. It says the US sits at 45%. You can go in there, links should be posted, how America became a third world country. Gallup poll says ideological attitudes in the country may be shifting. Economic conservatism has hit a 5-year low according to the Gallup poll. So it goes on here and it says that social liberalism is up 6 points since 2001. It says it is possible that Americans are returning to a certain sense of normalcy on economic ideology, while social ideology continues to charter new ground. Says in social conservatism saw the modest gains as well. In 2009, a record 42% of Americans said they were social conservatives, while in 2010, a high of 51% said they were economically conservative. Arizona lawmaker comes out as atheist during House prayer. References secular humanist tradition. Encourage other members not to bow their heads in prayer, but rather to look at each other and celebrate our shared humanness. Wolf Blitzer accidentally asks atheist tornado survivor if she thanks the Lord. So it says here that you are all right, but you made the right call. It says we're here, and we don't blame anyone for thanking the Lord. Though Vitzman handled the situation graciously, Blitzer would be well advised not to assume that every interview subject believes in God. After all, America experienced a 13% drop in religiosity between 2005 and 2012. It's the beginning of the end. Gay Scout vote only first step in demise of scouting, says the leaders. Says the Boy Scouts is a private organization, but has chosen to place sex and politics above its timeless principles, and they will ultimately fail because of this change. So, President of Texas Values said that they've willingly opened the door to allow homosexual advocates to overrun an organization that stands for a code of morality that these intolerant advocates reject. And we just remember covering in Georgia, there was a protest that was broken up, or at least anti-protest for gay marriage. It says here, court cancels Ukraine's first gay pride rally. So, last year, organizers canceled the event at the last minute when skidheads gathered at the planned location, intent on beating up the participants. Femin is financed by a Jew. It says here, a topless feminine activist held a fake gun in her mouth on the altar of Notre Dame Cathedral a day after historian Dominique Venner shot himself dead inside the iconic Paris building. They said here, with a slogan around their chest, "May fascists rest in hell." Feminine activists receive a salary of about $1,000, and the funds partly come from a Jew named Jed Sundin. And we'll return with this article: Tunisian feminists arrested for alleged provocation. Thank you.